The CEO's voice echoed like a champagne cork cracking against her eardrum. To the brilliant minds behind our energy breakthrough. The banquet hall, dressed in corporate decadence, marble floors, suspended orchids, plates that probably cost more than Alina's first car, erupted into applause. Everyone raised their glasses. Everyone except her. Alina Martinez, lead engineer, project spearhead, the woman who hadn't slept more than 5 hours in a year, sat frozen in her chair while her team was praised like background actors in a toothpaste commercial. Her name wasn't said. Not once. She blinked hard, willing the lump in her throat to stay where it belonged. She smiled, small, polite, surgically controlled, then took a sip of the champagne she hadn't wanted, the bubbles burning like betrayal. Of course, the CEO continued, grinning like he'd just solved world peace, with the market's response. We're investing those earnings right back into innovation. That means some expected bonuses are being deferred until Q3. Synergy now, success tomorrow. Alina didn't hear the rest. Her heart had already stopped clapping. Deferred? The last 3 years of her life had been buried in that converter, missed birthdays, a dislocated shoulder from a lab accident, and enough unpaid overtime to qualify as a small war crime. And now her bonus, her recognition, her damn name. Missing, she looked around the room. No one met her eyes, not her manager, not the CTO, not even the perky new hire who used to bring her coffee and now sat on stage like a show pony. It wasn't just a slip. It was a rewrite. And hey, before we go any deeper into this mess, if you're one of the 97% listening without subscribing, maybe hit that button. Seriously, it helps the crew keep spilling the tea. You don't want to miss what Alina's about to unleash. Back to our heroine. She pressed her napkin into her lap so hard her knuckles cracked. Across the room, the marketing guy, Ethan, grinned as someone toasted him as the next generation of innovation. Ethan, who once confused kilowatts with kilobytes. Ethan, whose first major contribution had been adding an emoji to the Team Slack channel. Alina felt something in her chest detach, something loyal, something tired. By dessert, the mask was fully on. She laughed at the appropriate times, even clapped when the CTO announced their expansion into Southeast Asia. But her eyes, cold, calculating, watching, she noticed who laughed too loud, who wouldn't look at her, who seemed nervous. They weren't just celebrating a product, they were celebrating her burial. On the Uber ride home, still in her cocktail dress and heels, Alina pulled up the internal dashboard on her phone. No mention of her on the patent filing. That couldn't be right, she was listed last week. There had even been a draft email confirming it. Now, nothing, she scrolled, clicked, refreshed, gone. She stared out the window at the blurry city lights. Her reflection looked calm, almost bored, but her brain was already breaking into rooms she'd never dared enter before. She wasn't going to scream. She wasn't going to quit, that would be too easy for them. She was going to play their game, learn the rules, then set the board on fire. Monday morning hit like a hangover she didn't earn. Alina slid into her usual corner desk, the one with the half-dead snake plant and coffee ring stains that had become her accidental signature. Her inbox was a war zone of congratulatory noise. Great job, team. We did it. So proud of this milestone. Except none of them addressed her directly. No, you killed it, Alina. No reply all memes, just static. Manufactured warmth with her name erased from the narrative. She logged into the employee dashboard, half expecting to see some form of retroactive credit on the patent logs. Maybe it was just a delay, a glitch, a Friday night oversight, but her name wasn't there. Not under inventor, not under contributor, not even under review notes. The metadata tag, the one she'd checked religiously every month for the last year, had been scrubbed clean like she'd never touched the prototype, never debugged the firmware at 3 a.m., never jury-rigged the damn converter's failsafe when it nearly exploded in the testing chamber. The listed names now read: Ethan Park, Jason Lai, Claire Donovan, a marketing intern, a supply chain analyst, and a junior engineer who once asked her what an oscilloscope did. Alina sat back slowly, palms flat on the desk, heart pounding so hard it blurred the edges of her vision. She opened the internal archive logs. Nothing. Opened the Git history for her technical spec. Locked. Permission denied. Fine, two could play dumb. She marched to HR like a woman on a tightrope lined with gasoline. Inside the pastel-colored office that smelled like synthetic lavender and denial, she found Stephanie, the HR rep with the fake listening face and real LinkedIn hustle. Hey, Stephanie, quick question. Lena kept her voice light, casual, like they were talking about printer toner. Do you know why I'm not listed on the converter patent filings anymore? Stephanie blinked. Oh, I wasn't aware you were supposed to be. Alina didn't flinch. I authored the prototype spec, filed the invention disclosure, and was CC'd on the legal review until last month. So, yeah, Stephanie tilted her head like a confused cocker spaniel. That might be a clerical error. I can open a ticket, but I doubt legal will move fast. You know how swamped they are this quarter. I don't need fast, Alina said, voice sharp enough to slice drywall. I need transparent. Can you send me the documentation tied to the last update? Stephanie's smile turned corporate. We don't usually share internal patent memos unless it's cleared through your manager. I can follow up, though. Alina stared at her for a beat too long, then nodded once and left without another word. The silence said more than a tantrum ever could. By lunch, the company newsletter dropped. Front page headline: Young engineer leads clean tech revolution. Meet Ethan Park. There he was, baby-faced, wearing a blazer too big for his bones, gesturing dramatically in front of the very converter Alina had personally hand-soldered the night before the pitch demo. The article credited his vision, his team coordination, his breakthrough approach. Her stomach flipped. She scrolled faster, hoping this was some awkward PR misfire, maybe a feature for recruitment day. But then she saw it, inventor of record, stamped next to his name, no asterisk, no mention of collaboration, no Alina. And just like that, confusion curdled into suspicion. Something was off, something had shifted, not just a glitch, not just corporate sloppiness. This was a surgical edit. The truth wasn't missing. It had been replaced. Alina stayed late that night, long after the office lights flickered into motion sensor silence and the cleaning crew passed by like ghosts with lemon-scented wipes. She sat in the blue glow of her dual monitors, headset off, notifications silenced, mouth tight as piano wire. She'd started with a single objective: prove they couldn't erase her without a trace. First stop was her old project notes, raw, unpolished, time-stamped. Opened her local dev folder and exhaled like someone cracking open a crypt. There it was, her original architecture diagrams, notes with her initials in the margins, bug logs in her voice, sarcastic, exact, laced with profanity. Git commits authored under her handle, the one she'd had since grad school. Then she hit the SharePoint archives, a maze of PDF hell and version control nightmares. 40 minutes in, she struck gold, an email from 2 years ago. Subject: Patent Contribution Acknowledgement. From legal. The body of the message laid it out in plain text. Per section 14.3b of your contract, direct inventorship on qualifying patents includes a guaranteed 2.5% profit share upon commercialization. She searched for the clause in her current employee record. Gone. No section 14.3b. Not even a 14.3a. The numbering skipped like a rigged lotto ticket. What replaced it was corporate oatmeal. All IP developed under company time is considered property of the firm, with discretionary credit assigned by management. Discretionary, as in, we'll credit you if we feel like it, sweetheart. She leaned back and laughed once. Just once. A dry, humorless exhale that fogged up her monitor. It rewritten her contract while she was too busy building the damn future to notice the erasure of her past. Rage didn't boil, it condensed. Dense, controlled. Alina opened a new drive partition, encrypted it. She copied every single spec, prototype render, version log, team chat with timestamp brainstorms, anything she'd authored, edited, even commented on. Then she backed up her backups twice. Some of those files she hadn't touched in years. Others still had tracked changes from a CTO who once claimed, let's keep this gender neutral. Maybe don't say her idea during a review call. She added that one to a folder labeled evidence in all caps. By 2:17 a.m., the final file was secured. She closed her laptop with the reverence of someone loading a weapon. The next morning, she looked exactly the same, blazer pressed, hair neat, tone cheerful, but something fundamental had shifted in her blood. Not had formed, not panic, not even heartbreak, something colder. She opened a browser tab, searched for IP litigation specialist Los Angeles female-owned. She clicked the first result with 5 stars and a picture of a woman in a red blazer who looked like she bit CEOs for sport. She stared at the number for a long time. Then she dialed. The CTO's office still smelled like Tech Bro cologne and old Red Bull cans, even after the redesign. It'd given him a wall-mounted smartboard, ergonomic standing desk, and some monster plant that looked like it regretted being alive. Alina stepped inside anyway, holding a printed copy of the patent diff log in her hand like a funeral program. Got a sec? She asked, flat but polite. He didn't look up, just gestured vaguely while scrolling on his monitor. Shoot. She sat down, crossed her legs, held the paper out. This is the filing log for the converter project, she said. My name's not on it anymore. I'd like to know why. Now he looked up. Seriously? He smirked like someone who'd just been asked why the sky was blue. We had to consolidate names. You're still on the team folder, right? That's all internal legal stuff. It wasn't internal legal stuff when I signed the original disclosure, she said, or when I presented at the Energy Summit, or when you emailed me last October thanking me for owning the back-end logic. He leaned back in his chair like she'd asked him to explain dark matter. Alina, come on, you know how these things go. Legal wanted fewer names for press purposes. It's not personal. Don't get emotional. There it was. Don't get emotional. That classic verbal sedative used to tranquilize any woman who dared demand accountability. She nodded once, filed the phrase in the same mental folder as you're too intense. Let's not make this awkward. And you should smile more. She rose without another word and left his office as he returned to watching a gif of a robot pouring a beer on Slack. Her next stop was HR. Again. This time, Stephanie was mid-salad fork when Alina walked in. I need to request a formal record of all patent filings I've contributed to in the last 3 years, Alina said without sitting. Stephanie blinked. That's a little unusual, I'm aware, Alina said, but I'm requesting it anyway, it's within policy. Stephanie offered a hollow smile, of course, But Alina, maybe it's worth asking yourself what energy you want to bring into Q2, you know? These things, they happen. Maybe it's better to focus on the future, not the past. Alina stared at her like she just suggested they solve corporate theft with aromatherapy. I am focused on the future, she said. That's why I want the records. Then she left. That afternoon, Alina attended the weekly all-hands with a smile so gentle it might have been bought at a wellness retreat. She laughed at Ethan's dumb joke about team synergy. She nodded when the COO mentioned tightening timelines. She even complimented the UX designer's new glasses, but her eyes, still stone. Behind that gaze, things were moving. She'd already wired a consultation fee to Miss Deborah Klein-esque IP attorney with a reputation for precision strikes and an Instagram bio that read IP doesn't stand for impress politely. The NDA was signed. The timeline had begun. The moment she handed over her drive, Deborah's response had been deliciously simple. Oh, honey, they done screwed up. From that day forward, Alina didn't argue, didn't correct, didn't raise her voice. She ghosted the gaslighters. Let them believe she'd swallowed it, simmered down, matured. Meanwhile, her silence was sharpening. Her smile, weaponized. She wasn't done. She was preparing. Alina met Deborah Klein in a corner office stacked with enough leather-bound law to kill a priest. The woman wore stilettos like weapons and read through Alina's encrypted thumb drive like it was a tabloid exposé she already knew the ending to. 35 minutes in, she looked up with a grin that didn't reach her eyes. Sweetheart, Deborah said, tapping her gel nails on the table. They left their digital panties hanging on the clothesline. Deborah had dug into the metadata, and the metadata sang. On file after file, backend logic trees, initial patent blueprints, R&D brainstorming logs, Alina's name was stamped like a ghost signature beneath every draft. Not Ethan, not Jason, not the CFO who once asked if the converter could be made wireless just for vibes. No, it was Alina. And every last edit submission and timestamp made it harder for them to deny that. She'd been there first, at every step, but that wasn't the worst part. Deborah flipped open her laptop and slid it across the table. On-screen was a zip of internal Slack exports, likely leaked by some poor junior legal staffer with a grudge and a VPN. Inside one chat, the CFO, Howard, of course it was Howard, typed, "She's too nice. We reroute through Ethan and Claire. Low risk of litigation. Won't even notice." Another line in a separate thread, "Alina's brilliant but not strategic. She won't fight." Alina's spine turned to ice. Her hands didn't shake, they just froze. The gall, the smug, spreadsheet-fueled arrogance. She'd known they underestimated her. But reading it, black text on white screen, typed by men in Patagonia vests who thought their MBAs were immunity cloaks that sliced deeper than any missed bonus. Deborah leaned in. "They didn't just screw you," she said. "They screwed themselves by leaving this trail. You were the originating inventor. You have time-stamped IP. They altered employment terms retroactively. That's not just unethical, that's fraud." "What now?" Alina asked. "Now," Deborah said, sliding a stack of forms forward, "we file a provisional patent under your name. Sole inventor, private, undisclosed. And we do it now before they try to launch under false claims." Alina signed. The stroke of her pen felt like lighting a fuse. The provisional was airtight. It didn't just claim ownership, it defined it. Legally, irrefutably. Deborah filed it within the hour, the application encrypted and timestamped with digital forensics that could make a grown man cry in a deposition. No one at the company knew. Not legal, not HR, not even Ethan, who was currently posting a LinkedIn selfie with the caption, "When you're leading innovation and staying humble, smiling light, #grind time." Let them have their moment. Let them keep smiling. Alina had planted a mine under their platform, and it was ticking. They didn't even bother pretending this time. The official invite hit Alina's inbox with the same passive-aggressive sparkle as a birthday card from an ex. Cordially invited to celebrate the public rollout of Project Helios. There was no mention of her contributions, no personal note from leadership, just a calendar link and a list of honorees that read like a boys' club LinkedIn circle jerk. Ethan Park, Jason Lai, CTO Gregory Baines. Not a whisper of Alina. The rollout was their golden goose. Months of interviews had been prepped, press junkets booked, investor meetings lined up like dominoes, all based on the clean energy converter, her converter, marketed under a glossy PR narrative that scrubbed her out like an oil stain. She was no longer angry. That fire had long since turned into something colder, meaner. It was when she opened the official press packet, forwarded accidentally by a clueless junior intern, that she made her decision. The innovation page listed Ethan as the visionary behind the technical leap. It praised the CTO for leadership under pressure. There was even a blurb quoting Claire, the marketing rep, describing her experience watching the team work so hard. Alina's name appeared once under project support logistics, the same category as the guy who delivered snacks during overtime. So, Alina smiled. Then she clicked RSVP. "Yes, I'll attend." And then, with almost ceremonial calm, she forwarded the same invite to Deborah. The short message, "I'll cover the ticket, bring something red." The plan crystallized fast. Deborah suggested a formal filing notification to coincide with the banquet, maximum disruption, minimum warning. Alina wanted more. I need the speech list, she said flat and calm over the phone. And the seating chart. You want to take the scenic route, Deborah murmured. I like it. Alina didn't request the documents from HR. She asked Julie, the events coordinator, who still owed her a favor for debugging her wedding slideshow last summer. Julie delivered within hours. Speech order, Ethan first. Then the CTO. Final toast by the CEO himself, scheduled for 9:05 p.m. sharp with a $1,000 bottle of champagne shipped in from France for the occasion. Alina highlighted that slot in red, seating chart, the execs clustered front and center. Investors and media to their left. And Deborah Klein, JD, be sitting, courtesy of Alina's +1, just 3 tables back, close enough to smell the foie gras. For the next 2 weeks, Alina said nothing. She attended meetings, nodded politely at hallway praise. Let Ethan pitch his work to investors like a man reenacting a script he barely understood. When someone asked if she'd be at the rollout banquet, she smiled and replied, wouldn't miss it. She even offered to help with name cards. But at night, in her apartment, she reheated old takeout and practiced standing up without shaking. Practiced the moment in her head when the room would turn silent. Let them toast. Let them pat each other's backs and sip imported champagne. She wasn't going to stop them. She was going to interrupt. The ballroom shimmered with corporate opulence, the kind that screams we care about the planet while serving caviar flown in on a private jet. Giant LED banners flashed the Project Helios logo in soft pastel gradients, like someone had hired a mindfulness coach to design a tech rollout. Alina stepped through the double doors exactly at 7:02 p.m., the picture of poise. Her gown was emerald satin, sharp at the shoulders, clean at the waist, and entirely unignorable. Her hair swept back in a knot that looked like it could cut glass. She wore a subtle smirk, kind you'd only notice if you were trained to look for blood and water. The execs noticed her instantly. They didn't know what to say, so they said nothing or worse, just enough. Didn't expect to see you here, the COO mumbled, swirling his champagne like a guilty magician. Of course you're here, the CTO barked with that brittle, terrified enthusiasm men use when they realize the body they buried is still breathing. Ethan, ever the golden retriever in human form, gave her a one-armed hug and said, God, you look amazing, totally killing it. She smiled and thanked him in the same tone you'd use to accept a compliment from someone who once plagiarized your physics midterm. At table 11, Deborah sat in a crimson sheath dress, expression neutral, name tag reading guest of E. Martinez. No one recognized her. No one cared. Just another +1 in a sea of donor wives and C-suite arm candy. That would change. Music was soft jazz, the wine was flowing. The seating chart was followed down to the inch. Alina's table, strategic, perfect sightline to the podium, perfect angle to watch the CEO cradle that champagne bottle like a newborn savior. At 8:14 p.m., Ethan took the stage. The crowd hushed. Phones rose. Investors leaned forward. Tonight, Ethan began, we celebrate the impossible becoming inevitable. Project Helios isn't just a product. It's a movement, a clean energy revolution born from grit, brilliance, and team synergy. Alina watched, unreadable. Buzzword after buzzword rolled off his tongue. Innovative pivot, adaptive systems, modular fail-safe core. Phrases she'd coined. Lines lifted straight from her prototype documentation. She could practically hear her old pitch deck being performed like Broadway karaoke. People clapped. The board nodded. A journalist scribbled something on a notepad. Lena took a sip of wine and didn't blink. Ethan wrapped up with a wide grin, gestured toward the CTO, and said, and of course, none of this would be possible without the leadership that carried us through. Gregory Baines swaggered up, sweat already pooling at the collar of his expensive jacket. His speech was shorter, full of buzzwords like alignment, vision, and agile success. He made a vague joke about late nights and caffeine-fueled innovation, which got polite chuckles from the team and a visible eye roll from Deborah. Then, at exactly 9:04 p.m., the lights dimmed subtly. The MC's voice rang out, and now, to honor the future of Project Helios, our fearless CEO, Mr. Leonard Wexler. Applause rose like a tide. Leonard stepped up with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. His cufflinks sparkled, his grin gleamed, and in his hand, he held the $1,000 bottle of vintage champagne like he was about to anoint a holy relic. He raised the mic with a practiced pause, and just as he opened his mouth to speak, Alina leaned ever so slightly to her left. Deborah stood, unrecognized, uninvited, and very, very ready. The champagne bottle tilted skyward, its gold foil catching the light like some gilded promise. Leonard Wexler held it aloft, beaming down at the sea of faces who had no idea they were about to choke on their own applause. To the future, he began, voice booming with press-trained authority. To progress, innovation, and the unstoppable spirit of this team, Alina's eyes flicked toward Deborah. Deborah nodded once. Then she moved, smooth, unhurried, like she had all the time in the world. She stepped out from behind table 11, heels clicking against the marble like a countdown. The room didn't notice. At first, just another guest going to the restroom, maybe, until she turned and spoke. Mr. Wexler, she said, clear and firm, I represent Alina Martinez. Effective this morning, we filed suit for fraud, patent misattribution, and IP theft. We also submitted a provisional patent claim asserting Miss Martinez as the sole inventor of the Helios energy converter. The room froze. A glass clinked against a plate somewhere. Someone coughed. Wexler blinked. The bottle still hovering midair. "What?" he said, not furious. Not confused, just caught. Deborah reached into her bag and pulled out a red envelope. Sealed, thick, brutal. She stepped up to the stage without waiting for permission and handed it directly to him. "Everything you're currently toasting belongs to my client," she said. "That includes your product IP, your launch materials, and the tech framework you just pitched to 3 acquisition boards this week. Congratulations, you're now marketing a disputed asset." A pause, then chaos. Somewhere in the investor tables, a sharp intake of breath. Then a whisper, "Wait, isn't that deal with Origin Energy going public Monday?" Another voice, "Their stocks tied to Helios. If the patent's under litigation," panic ignited in slow motion. You could see the spreadsheets recalculating behind their eyes. The CTO turned gray. Ethan looked like someone had unplugged him from reality. PR flacks began murmuring into their phones like hostages calling home. Wexler stammered, "This is a misunderstanding. There's protocol." Alina Martinez authored the original invention disclosure, Deborah said calmly. "We have metadata, time-stamped code, and a digital chain of custody proving she was removed from internal filings after the fact, which, under U.S. patent law, is grounds for immediate injunction." Sharp crack as the cork of the $1,000 champagne bottle finally popped. On its own, too late, forgotten. The foam spilled over the edge down Wexler's hand onto the mic. He stood there, soaked in his own celebration, while the room around him spiraled into legal dread. Alina didn't move, didn't gloat. She just sat, chin lifted, eyes locked on Wexler like a woman watching the house she used to live in burn from the comfort of her new porch. No shouting, no gavel, just a woman reclaiming what was hers, at the precise moment they thought they'd buried her for good. The flash hit just as the champagne hung midair, like some rich people exorcism caught in stasis. Foam cascading from the bottle, the CEO's face frozen in a half-formed grimace, and a room full of investors blinking like deer staring down the business end of a freight train. Alina didn't flinch. She didn't need to. The photo would circulate before dessert was served. And that was by design. She rose slowly from her chair, heels clicking with the same measured cadence as her plan, months in the making, clean as a bullet. No words, no mic drop. Just a glance over her shoulder at Deborah, who slipped her bag over one shoulder and gave Wexler one last nod that might as well have been a burial prayer. They walked out through the service corridor, past the kitchen, past the swinging doors that smelled of rosemary, lamb, and panic. Outside, the night air tasted like vindication. And headlights. 3 media vans were parked half on the curb, reporters already climbing out with notepads in one hand and phone cameras in the other. One woman shouted, "Miss Martinez, is it true the patent was stolen?" Another asked if she had a comment for Origin shareholders. Alina kept walking, didn't smile, didn't blink. The email had gone out that morning. From a burner address, press list pulled from an old comms folder. Subject line, "You might want to be at the Helios banquet tonight." She and Deborah climbed into the back of a waiting car and shut the door before the flashes stopped. Inside the car, silence bloomed. Deborah finally spoke. "Well," she said, smoothing her skirt that went better than I expected. Alina chuckled, a dry, exhausted sound. By Monday morning, the company's stock dropped 11%. By Wednesday, it was down 22%. The acquisition deal with Origin was delayed pending internal review. PR released a 2-sentence statement. The product was under legal evaluation. Internally, the company went on lockdown. Patent files were scrubbed. HR froze promotions. Legal started calling ex-employees in the middle of the night. On Friday, Alina's personal phone rang. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. The message played, "Miss Martinez, this is Diana from the board's legal team. We'd like to open a line of discussion. Quietly, we believe there's a path to resolution that serves everyone's interest. Please call me back at your earliest convenience." Alina sat in her living room, barefoot, wrapped in a sweatshirt 3 sizes too big, tea gone cold on the table beside her. The TV played one of those ambient fireplace videos. She stared out the window, the city blinking like a constellation no longer out of reach. She didn't smile, didn't cry, she just breathed. Not the kind of breath that fills you up, but the kind that finally lets something go. Let them rewrite history. She'd already written the ending, and she liked how it sounded in silence. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.